Hello, mother. Hello, father. What's up, everyone? Welcome on this. I need my glasses. On this 4th day of June, 2024. 2026. 2026. My name is Luke Thomas. This is episode 305 of my live chat. Thank you so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. What's on the docket today? Well, what else is there? I mean, I suppose we can talk about Bilal Muhammad fighting Gabriel Bonfim. I'm not opposed to that. We can do that. We could talk like, why the fuck is Brendan Allen fighting, who's ranked 4th in the division? Why is he fighting unranked Edmund Shabazian? That's a strange one. We can talk about that. Or we can talk about the thing that actually matters, which is the UFC White House. We don't have to talk about that either, obviously. I want to be clear. But boys and girls, I have done more media for this fight than I've maybe ever done for any fight in my life. My interview schedule next week is like bonkers. I think I have like 2 or 3 interviews, some of them being in studio almost every single day. Like, it's going to be crazy. And the crazy part about all of that, if you can believe it, is, and here's the thing that just makes it all kind of weird, nobody is asking about the fights. And you might say, oh, well, the MMA fans will. Yes, true, obviously. Sports fans will too. Agreed. No issue so far. But the political media, right? There's MMA media covering an event at the center of the concentric circle. Then there's sports media, right? It's even bigger audience. This is big at this point, right? So, sort of small to medium, large when you get to the sports media side. And then you get to political media, and it's like a vast new audience. They're not asking about the fights. They're just asking about the event. It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre. So that is happening. We can get to all of that or not. We can talk about Conan the Barbarian. Who gives a fuck, right? Your chat as much as it is mine. So thank you for being here. I greatly appreciate it. Thumbs up if you haven't already. Hit subscribe. Without further ado, we got to get this party started. Let's do it. All right. I put up the post. Usually I put it up the day before. I didn't. I wanted to try putting it up today. Naturally, it did not get as filled out as it ordinarily would have. I don't know if I'll go back to doing this. I kind of wanted to see. But in any event, you guys fill it up. You put those questions to the top. We'll go for about an hour on that. And then if you would like to support the channel, you're certainly under no obligation to do so. But if you would like to, there's 2 ways you can support the channel. One, you can put a donation into the super chat, and then we'll look at your question. We'll put it on the screen in the second half of the show. Or you can become a member, and you can then contribute to the live chat and even the paid portion for free. All right? All right. Very good. Thanks to everyone who is here. Thanks to everyone who supports the channel. Thank you to everyone who is listening or watching. I greatly appreciate you all. I hope you're having a good week. I hope you're having a good time. I will say this for the Apex card this weekend. You know, as far as Apex cards go, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good card. As far as Apex cards go. So I suppose there's something to like this weekend too. All right, what do I have today? This is also the GOAT. Cherry lime, Sprite, zero sugar chill. I don't know what the chill part means, but as far as diet sodas go, that's a 10 out of 10. All right. Without further ado, let's get to these questions, shall we? I think we shall. All right. Let's do it. Oh. Okay. Let's do it this way. No, wait. You know what? Let me refresh this. And now let's do it. Okay. All right. Jesus, I got stuff in my mouth. Okay. Luke, I read your Substack post regarding you being close to being completely done with MMA. That's not quite right. How are you feeling now? Was that a moment of frustration or something that you feel nonstop nowadays? For what it's worth, love you and your content, brother. Yeah, I think people kind of misinterpreted that a little bit, although I suppose not without good reason. It's more, the question I have is not about being completely done as such, but more about like I don't quite understand my place. I listen. I totally get. I don't even know how to approach this kind of thing. I just don't know what utility exists within MMA as MMA currently exists that I'm providing, except to a. I appreciate my audience. Please don't get me wrong, but it's like I think it's just us. Like I don't know who else would be interested in this kind of thing. I don't know if there's like a burgeoning nascent part of the audience that's really, really craving this. Again, so there are people. I'm incredibly grateful for it. It's changed my life. How could I not be? But I guess what I'm just wondering is, is this a slowly dying breed? I don't know the answer to that, but I suppose what I would confess is that I am, I'd be foolish to not consider it, I think. And so it just begins to ask questions of like, what is to be done about that? What does this all mean? I don't know. I don't know. These are kinds of things that are ruminating in my head. And it's not even a dodge when I say I don't know. Like generally, man, there's been times where I've had really good senses of things. Sometimes that's been right. Even then, sometimes it's been wrong. Other times I had like a vague hint of what would happen, and then it really happened. It's not that I don't want to trust intuition. I think my intuition would tell me that there are some interesting things to pay attention to given the current state of MMA. But I think so boldly as to make a prediction, I don't know. It seems like a lot, at least right now for me. But yeah, man, like, I mean, I don't want to make every question about some kind of referendum on my worldview, but to me, we are living at a time of great peril to our way of life. And to watch the UFC be party to that, and then all of the things that had to happen to get to this point, and then what it means potentially for the future, it's disconcerting. For me, anyway, it's disconcerting. I would imagine for others, they don't care at all. It's not like a universal thing. I'm not making this a universal application. It is only about me. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know how you can believe what I believe and look at what I do and then look what everyone else is doing and then be like, the newer fans are really clamoring for this. Is that true? I don't know how true that is. You recently, by the way, I forgot to mention this at the top. If you want the Chud free chat, it's over on Substack. We like the Chuds here for a little bit because they hang out and that's good for the channel. They can be, kind of a chore to talk to, but they hang out and whatever. So we don't kick them out as such. But if you are tired of them, you can go on the Substack and do the Chud free chat if you're interested in that. All right, forgot to mention that. Okay, let's do this here very quickly. You recently, God damn it. You recently mentioned that if Netanyahu was at he's not going, was at the UFC White House card, that might just make you stop covering MMA. If that does happen, what kind of job would you try and pursue? I really don't think it's going to come to it. This came from some kind of weird, who's the streamer? Aiden Ross statement, like an offhanded statement, and people kind of ran with it. I looked into this a little bit, and I talked to people who I trust and know. They say that there's nothing to it. Now, that's not, that doesn't mean it won't happen. I'm not declaring that it's like absolutely impossible, but my money is that it's not real. There's a lot of rumor mongering that's going around in a lot of different directions, and it's coming out of nowhere. I don't know who. Again, this event is unlike any other event. So on Twitter, I don't know if you guys have seen this today. There's been people suggesting that, like, oh, Erica Kirk is going to host the UFC White House thing, and that might happen, but to my knowledge, that's not true at all. And I'm just seeing it like, oh, the UFC announced it. Well, they didn't. Not as of the time of this broadcast, they didn't. No, they didn't. And then, this is kind of funny. Over on Blue Sky, how like all of those music acts were pulling out of the concert that's associated, not with this fight, but like on the July 4th weekend. And, like only Milli Vanilli is, or not, no, they pulled out. I think Vanilla Ice is the only one left. And, Trump, I think, is going to cancel the whole thing. Anyway, they were rumor mongering that the UFC fighters were pulling out. I'm like, okay, no, that's not going to happen. It's a coveted spot for them. Like, this is how they get paid. Why the fuck would they do that? It's just people just making up shit. So people are just making up shit about this left and right. And like, oh, Benjamin, dude, like, Listen, I don't agree with a lot of the judgment that UFC staff and brass have exercised over the last 4 years or 5 years or so, but that's a whole different level of problems. And by the way, have you guys noticed that Sean Strickland kind of agitating around this? He's been vastly more influential than any other critic of this event in getting people angry at it, myself included. I'm not even trying to get people angry about it as much as I don't care. The event itself does not bother me, but you understand like the point I'm trying to make. Like this is such a source of deep agitation that they would be running. It just seems crazy that they would even try it. And again, to the extent that I've looked into it, I can't find any truth to it. So take that for what it is worth. Someone kind of repeating another one. I'll skip that one because it's the same one as the first one, but I appreciate the question. Thoughts on Strickland and Gaethje's back and forth on Twitter? Broken clock and dedicated broken clock versus dedicated doofus. This person writes, yeah, this is an interesting one. If you guys, I'm sure most of you saw this, but if you didn't see it, the conversation starts a little bit earlier. Sean Strickland, you'll note, some months ago, there's an interview of him circulating. He's in the gym. Maybe it's the PI, maybe it's Extreme Couture, but in it, someone's like, "Oh, you're going to go to the White House card?" He's like, "Oh, go hang out with the Epstein files? No thanks, dude." And it's been kind of circulated. Now he kind of walked that back after he recaptured the middleweight title against Hamzat. You'll note he was kind of like, I might. I think he had kind of said like, "I'm going to go now," or at least he indicated he might go. It seemed like he was walking back the original Epstein files thing. And then, he's been critical of Israel and he's been critical of the Trump's relationship to the Epstein files. And what he revealed yesterday was that he's not allowed to go and attend the event. I mean, I suppose he can go to the Ellipse, but he can't go to, on the White House grounds. And he said it's because he had criticized Israel and had criticized the Epstein files. And then this led to, I forgot the exact genesis of how they crossed paths, or no, somebody had brought up that Sean was somebody was going back and forth with Justin, and that Sean had spoken out about this, and then Justin Gaethje lobs an insult and calls Sean stupid or American hating or some combination of both, and then he just brought in the whole go support Israel thing, go support Epstein files, blah blah blah. Justin responds to that being like, go hang out with your American hating goons, and then I'm not even sure where it left off. I know Sean even responded to that one. Like, what do I make of the whole thing? One, as I mentioned before, Sean, as an agitator of this event, is having more traction related to this than just about anybody else that I've seen, to be quite honest with you. And again, I really just don't believe that they're going to have a guy who has an ICC warrant out for his arrest, just attending on Paramount and everyone sort of forced to pretend that this is totally normal. I mean, the optics of that are quite bad, right? The UFC has to know on some level this is going to be the first time people are watching them. Putting that out there just seems unnecessarily divisive. And it seems like you can accept their premise for what they're doing or not, but like, what kind of tone are they striking for the most part? It's a pretty conciliatory one. Now, it's contradicted by the fact that Dana often says things like, "Hey, I don't, if you don't like my Trump support, go fuck yourself." But in general, like, hey, what are they trying to tell you about the event? They're trying to cast a wide net. I just don't believe it. But Sean is agitating around some of the reasons why he got banned. Now, my view is like, of all the of all the places to draw the line on the stuff he said, it's not about insulting Islam. It's not about insulting Muslims. It's not about going after trans people, gay kids, parents or whatever. Like, it's not about any of those things. It's actually some of the more true. I don't know everything he said about Israel. I don't know everything he said about the Epstein files. So please understand, like, my comment comes from that reality. But the stuff I have seen him say about Israel seems, for the most part, fine to me, or at least not objectionable. And the stuff he said about the Epstein files, I'm actually not too sure what he said about that. But, those are not exactly exonerating documents at a bare minimum, and they deserve further scrutiny, which we're not going to get, in part because, the person charged with tasked with releasing them is all up in them shits. Like, of all the things to go after him, these are the most fact-based things he said about any figure or cause or thing that he's attacked. This is by far the least problematic thing that he said. But to me, like, what is more Trump administration and the way in which they made, combating anti-Semitism, aka attacking the left and going after, the left's power, then trying to force this on speech codes at universities, or various states making you sign loyalty pledges to them, or even getting back to the Trump administration, just like all the numerous myriad ways in which they've made combating anti-Semitism like a focal point of what they do. And now it gets extended to a guy who's one of the few American champs that they have on the roster. It's actually quite perfect in a certain kind of way. I mean, I don't wish it on him exactly, but I mean, what other way was this going to go? There's a bunch of lines you can cross, but like going after Israel is just not a line that you can cross. And that's just the way this administration is going to roll. It's just the way they deal with everybody at this point. Someone should ask Dana White his opinions about it. I'd be curious to see how he toes that line. But yeah, it's been the case all of my life that criticizing Israel came at a very, very substantial, or at bare minimum, noticeable cost. And long term, this just won't stand. But we're still in an intermittent period where you're simply not allowed to do that. And I know what folks might say. They're like, Trump's going to have whoever they want on that White House lawn. And that is true. Like, it's the lawn. He's the guy who lives there. He can have whoever he would like to have there. But it's the pettiness of it relative. First of all, it's the objective pettiness of it. And then secondly, it's the bizarreness of like all the things that they'll like, like you should ask them, like, why are you against anti-Semitism? Like, what are they going to say? Like, it's you, what are you being racist towards them in some kind of way? Or, you're prejudicing them in some kind of a way. It's like, but dude, you guys don't care about all the other forms of prejudice that gets expressed. It's just this particular one that's your hobby horse. And fine, like, to the extent that it's real, yeah, it's obviously a bad thing. But like criticizing, I mean, you guys know how I think. Criticizing Israel is like, this is a thing that they're still the forces in play, which are this is a key feature of the Trump administration. This is a way which they can, both shore up their allies. Israel is, intimately tied into this White House, the last one too, but intimately tied into this one. And then combating these things, these are ways in which they can police their political adversaries. It just so happens now that the popularity of Israel is growing so metastasized, essentially, that it's reaching now portions of the electorate that would ordinarily be quite sympathetic to them. And Strickland's caught up in that. As for the back and forth between he and Justin, I mean, I'm not really sure what to say about that. Justin's very understandably, he's got a fight coming up, and it's probably high stakes, and he's going to be high strung about it. I think that part's no scandal and no surprise. He got sideways with me when I went after the UAE, and it's like, dude, the guy who runs the UAE was funding a genocide in Sudan. Like, what are we talking about? Like, what are you mad at me for? You tweet something ugly about the government, they'll throw your fucking ass in prison there. You took a video of a drone from Iran going into a tower, they'd lock your ass up over that. Like, what are we talking about? You know what I mean? So he's a little bit touchy, I think, generally on some of this stuff. But, I think it just shows the fissures in the Trump coalition. These are people that were all united previously, but like, look at how dividing to an extent this event is, but more importantly, look at how dividing the Epstein files have been, the kind of, the cleaving off of a branch of support. And then also the support of Israel, and like all the ways in which that is maintained within this administration. Like, clearly it's pulling this coalition that returned him to power apart, and you can literally see it through UFC fighters beefing on Twitter. What do you think about Trump's suggestion that the Freedom 250 design shouldn't be demolished, but instead potentially preserved as a historical artifact? I think he is trolling liberals. Yeah, I think they're trying to get liberals to act all hysterical. This is what they do, right? They actually do things that get liberals hysterical, that deserve to be, made as such. But they also do a bunch of stuff that's not that way. I think that what they're doing is they're just trying to anger liberals. I mean, part of this whole event is a little bit like that. Yeah, I think that's what it's for. I think it's to trigger the libs, to own the libs, so that they go, oh, look at this. This is a travesty. I'm so mad. Like, turn them all and make them all look like Karens when, if you don't live in DC, you won't really appreciate this as much. But like as somebody who's been here a really long time, it's hard to overstate. I've never seen a president try to make a physical mark on a city in a way that Trump has. There's really no analog to it whatsoever. And more to that point, I've also never seen. I mean, DC hated Bush. They hate Trump even more. Like trying to force himself on a city that wants him the least. It's really quite bizarre. What is some evidence for this? Putting his name on the Kennedy Center, which I know he now has to take off, but he tried it. You know, the reflecting pool, putting what, well, I don't know what that is. They're putting water back in it today. He wants to put an arch between the Lincoln Memorial and Arlington Cemetery, much, by the way, to the chagrin of the folks who are trying to preserve the interests of Arlington Cemetery. They think it is an abomination that the administration has even suggested as much, taking over East Potomac Park. Now, there are some renovations that are needed. If he does good renovations, I'll say as much. But you know, it looks like this is a public golf course. It's only a few bucks to go and play, 9 or 18 holes. They have 36 of them. They want to turn it into something about, it seems like we'll have to see what the plans are ultimately, but they want to, at least they want to get rid of the bike path completely. My daughter, there's a playground at the tip of it. It's called Haynes Point. My daughter had her second birthday there. We reserved it and used it. I learned how to swim in the pool there at Haynes Point at a Red Cross camp in the 80s. Like he just took it over. They just completely took it over. And this is happening all over the city. Now, someone might say, he turned the fountains on. I've seen right-wing media talk about that a lot. And I'll tell you the truth. Turning the fountains on in the way that they have done is the first good thing I've ever seen him do for DC. And it is a good thing. It is a good thing. It makes the parks so much nicer. It makes Union Station much nicer. It makes Malcolm X Park. Some people will call it Meridian Hill Park. It makes them so much nicer. It makes them quite beautiful. It turns them into what they were supposed to be. And I recognize as much. But then when you look at where they're getting the funding from, it's from park fees from the rest of the country. And then a bunch of maintenance for all of those places is now going, they're not doing it. And it's they're foregoing the maintenance that has to happen elsewhere. I mean, it's like, don't get me wrong. I'm happy to see the fountains on. Yes, it's beautiful. I totally agree. But it's like, what are we doing here? Like, this is not, we're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. And, if there's a better way to do it and we can leave the fountains on, that's great. But like this is just, just taking control of things to put on a presentation and make it, the way he likes it. And it's like, the reflecting pool belongs to you and me. The White House belongs to you and me. Kennedy Center is a little bit different in that regard, but that arch, they're circumventing normal processes to get that done. Putting his face on currency, for example, putting his face on passports, just trying to force himself in this way, on everybody. And leaving that up would certainly, accomplish that task, or be or just having the event is kind of in conjunction with it. But at the same time, the UFC has, like, leaving that up would be really, really bad press long term, and it would be at the foot of the UFC, and I just don't think they want that. I think he's just trolling the libs. He's trying to get the libs to go, what? This is a travesty, He's trying to get some kind of reaction. And like comparing it to the Eiffel Tower and shit, Don't know if you'll be able to answer this honestly, but I'll try anyway. LOL. What do you feel are the realistic chances that Merab, who, as you've said, has the best cardio you've ever seen in MMA, and I share the sentiment, isn't on any EPO or PEDs? We've seen several athletes we know were on PEDs and have a fraction of his cardio and honestly durability. Trust me, as a lifelong sports fan in my mid-30s, I'm fully aware that there are some guys who are just freaks. Fair enough. But come on, just between you and me, Luke, what are the chances he just has this gas tank is due to genetics mixed with hard work and dedication? My answer is I don't care. Don't care. Godzilla just came home. Let's see. Not too bad. All right. Last week they came home it was Godzilla and Mothra trying to kill each other in my living room. It was unbelievable. She had a friend over. It was bananas. All right. Okay. Is Merab on something? I don't care. And the reason why I don't care, I mean, to answer the question, okay. Let me answer it in the only way that I can. There is nobody you're going to mention to me that I'm going to be like, oh, it can't be the case. There's nobody. There's nobody. I am the revelation that any of them would be on it would be utterly unsurprising to me. Even ones who like you might physique wise never guess. Nope, them too. There's just nothing you can say about it. What we know about the rate of use, related to pro sports, even with significant PED enforcement, is still pretty high, and it can be pretty high under a variety of different circumstances. So that's not to say there's nothing to PED enforcement in terms of tamping down the ultimate amount of use, but anyway, not to relitigate that. But here's my reality: like there is an anti-doping system in place, and either it's not above board, in which case, well, who gives a shit anymore? Like you're not going to know the difference, or it is, and he is consistently in compliance. He was this way when USADA was there as well. There's been no change to the way he performs, even with change to the regulatory function and mechanism of the anti-doping protocol that they have. It's been kind of the same, even as and I guess it's slowing down a little bit, but he's aging a little bit too. And there's a ton of miles on him. Like none of it seems red flaggish in that way. And my point is, like, if you can use PEDs within a testing system and they can never detect it and there's never an issue, you know what I mean? Like my view on PEDs is, and one, the athletes should have a hand in making the system, but two, the system can never work perfectly. It can never work. You don't want it to be like a joke if you're going to have one, but it can never, ever, ever, ever work perfectly. You have to accept that some part of it, people are going to maybe like, get through when they shouldn't, or there's going to be very, very clever cheaters that will just evade detection forever. That is a necessary risk you have to run, in my opinion, in order to preserve enough of the athlete rights on the other end to make all of this work. You deter and you limit. You don't absolutely crush. That's been the big mistake that everyone's made. And so, if you have to fight a guy who's using, this is cold comfort to tell you this, but like for me, it's like if y'all are happy with this system, and everyone seems to be much happier with this system than the last one, and someone can maintain compliance, I don't ultimately know what the answer is. I just don't care. I just don't care. We kind of been over this one. What do you make of Strickland being banned from the White House? I mean, what do you want me to what is there to even say? An American champion can't go, but some donks in the Epstein files are going to be front and center. I mean, who said that this was going to happen? Like, who's going to be there? You know what I mean? I was wrong about the total number. I thought it would be closer to 3. It's going to be closer to 4. So they definitely beat my projections in that sense. I'll cop to it in that way. But like in getting a sense of who's going to be there, and like, even the troops, like they want height and weight requirements, which I get. I totally get that. Like you want uniformed personnel to present themselves well on camera. I don't have an issue with that, but it's like, dude, like understand like what that means, that they're props. And even if you didn't have the height and weight requirements, they can still be as much, but it just sort of gives the game away about what they're there to do. Like who's this for? At least in attendance. I mean, anyone watching on TV, it's a different situation, but certainly in attendance, who's that for? It's Donald Trump's birthday party. No more, no less. Okay, good question. Someone else asked me this in IRL. Have you been following the recent developments in the WWE shareholder lawsuit over the TKO merger? Brandon Thurston of Post Wrestling has done excellent reporting on the case. I was actually on a phone call with a producer on a podcast I'm going to go on next week, and he brought that exact same dude up to me. No is the answer. I have not, but it's been my homework, and I have to check it out. I think that trial starts. Okay, I did hear this. The trial starts not tomorrow, but the following Friday. Did I get that right? I think that's right. That's a pretty serious one too. No, I need to dig into that one. I have to dig into that one because I'm going to have to talk about it to a degree. But yeah, I will make it a point. It's a good question. I don't have a good answer yet, but I will. Any chance? Can you see? Yeah. Any chance we could bring back resume review with Chuck or another MK regular? I think it would be just as great as it used to be. McGregor would be an interesting one for the new UFC fans post COVID. You know what? That's a good question. I had not thought of it. I'd do it for free because they wouldn't pay us for it. McGregor is an interesting one. You know what? I'll ask the lead producer, see if they want to do it, see if there's a place for it. If there is, I'd be game. How about that? If he wins at the UFC White House versus Garcia, would you have any interest in the Diego Lopes? Sorry, one more time. If he wins at the UFC White House versus Steve Garcia, would you have any interest in Diego Lopes taking on Charles for the BMF? That's interesting. Seems like there's not much else for him at 45, especially if Volk remains champ. And given his size, I personally think he could do well at 55. I don't hate the idea. I don't know if it's hard to know if they may want to run the Saryukian fight back and then with Charles and then run that winner of that into Ilya. Because you have to ask yourself, who's Ilya fighting after this? Assuming he beats Justin, who's he fighting? The answer, obviously, it can only be one of three choices, right? It can only be Conor McGregor, and that's assuming Conor McGregor wins. So that's a whole other thing. But let's just sort of say, like, he'd be in the sweepstakes, right? Islam would be one, and then Arman. These would be the top three ones you'd have to figure out. So, like, where does Arman figure in that pecking order? Is he next? And if he is, okay, that leaves up Charles, but do they really want to run it at 55? I don't know. That doesn't seem like the clubhouse leader, but I do agree that it's a interesting matchup given the circumstance. If you were Scott Coker, how would you approach creating a self-sustaining UFC product? Limited weight classes, specific states, locations for fight nights to grow a fan base? Honestly, dude, I fucking wouldn't. If someone was like, here's $60 million, can you create something dynamic that can do big numbers on a broadcast platform, and you can hire a bunch of your friends? I'm going to be like, well, I might tell my friends, hey guys, let's go scamming because we just got $60 million. But I understand. Listen, I understand that like any person, everyone's going to have their own set of biases related to anything in MMA or out of it, like the way which that can manifest itself, as we all understand, can appear a number of different ways. I had to watch I had to watch all of Bellator on Showtime, but certainly before that on CBS Sports when they were on there, and then on Paramount Network before that for a variety of different reasons. The sound of Bellator certainly by the time they got to Showtime, but even before that, the sound of Bellator was the sound of fans booing the main event out of the stadium or the arena or whatever it was. I mean, it just blows my mind how people are just not remembering this. The reason I can remember this is because I remember there was one week where I made an offhanded comment about one of the cards that we had to cover on MK, and I got a fucking phone call about it. You know what I mean? Like, and my response to my boss at the time was like, well, like, make the cards better. Like, what do you want me to say about this shit? And I just can't believe that people are like not, or what they're saying is like, the other thing they're saying is, well, they didn't have their own guys. They didn't, it wasn't their company and they didn't develop it from scratch. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. Like, I can believe that that's a meaningful difference. But I talked to some pretty high up people at Bellator after it went out of business or got basically shuttered or sold, whatever the proper description is. And I can tell you not one person brought that up. So it seems to me like I can plausibly add that to the list of things that definitely made the job harder. And certainly the one part of that is incontestably true is the way in which the Bellator product just got moved through a bunch of channels, ending up behind a paywall on Showtime. Like that is very, very real, and I accept that. And that cannot have been easy. That's a huge problem. But like part of the reason they got moved around is they were underperforming at all those other places too. Like that's part of the reason why they got bumped. It's not the only reason, but that's a big one. It's just blowing my mind that like this is not factoring in to the discussion at all, dude. Like the last few months of Bellator actually had a bunch of good shows. They did some Japan stuff. They did a bunch of their tournament stuff in that space. They had some decent shows there. But like over the course of their life on Showtime, what's your favorite Showtime Bellator fight that you can recall off the top of your head? There's not many. There's not many. Like what are we talking about here? And we're now at a place where like you're almost up against that too. I mean, because PFL is there, and I guess one going out of business makes it somewhat easier. And I don't know. I don't get it. Honestly, I don't really get it. I don't understand what the pitch is. And I think that they have competent people who work there. Kevin Kay at Spike TV, who I knew, I think is a very, very, very smart guy. Rich Chow, matchmaker, Elite XC, Strikeforce, and Bellator. I have a lot of respect for Rich Chow. And then there's Chris de Blasio, who does communications. Like I worked with him at Showtime as well. He's great. Like these are all great people. So it's not like they got dumbasses running it, but it's like between just the headwinds themselves and like part of I just feel like if you're going to add all the good stuff from Strikeforce as like what do we think about what can be built here, cool, you should. That's part of the story. The other part of the story is, dude, like that product was ass at the end. It was terrible. Like that's also part of the story too, and it just feels like we're just like talking about one side of it. So I just wouldn't, dude. I think that the headwinds are way too much. I am shocked that people want, honestly, I'm like, if I have one takeaway from this, it's like I can't believe that people think now is a good time to do this. It's mystifying to me that this is true. Maybe they feel like there's a revenue model that they could chase, that they can thread a very, very difficult needle. Let's see it. What could be better than being wrong? Like all of a sudden there's a bunch of money coming in on MMA. And I'll say that too, $60 million coming in on MMA, and it doesn't come from Turkey. This is a good thing. But I don't know how you make this work. I don't. So I'll be curious to see if they do. I'll start by acknowledging I am a Jan fan. So my question is, if they end up doing the Merab versus Jan trilogy and Jan wins, followed by Jan O'Malley 2 and Jan wins that, both I think he would be favored to win, and then goes up, and I admit this is unlikely, but just stay with me, fights Aljo at 45. If Aljo is able to beat the winner of Movsar versus Volk for the belt, where would Jan rank on the pound-for-pound list after having avenged all his losses and moved up a weight class? I know. A lot of hypotheticals and unlikely scenarios, I admit. I just feel that technically Jan is almost as good as it gets in the sport. And now having been able to beat the cardio machine in Merab in a 5-round fight, there's not much that I can see him not able to do. Umar might be the only test for him. Anyways, I know these what-ifs aren't your favorite, but I was just hoping you might humor me with just this once on air. Appreciate your time. Obviously, it's going to depend on what someone else does. Because if Ilya goes up to 170 and let's say starches Islam, that's going to affect the conversation, right? But what I would say is if Merab does what you say, where he gets a revenge on these donks, goes up a weight class, has success up there, that's the definition of pound for pound. That's the literal definition of pound for pound. You wipe out your contemporaries at your weight class and you go up the fucking hill and you start moving downhill on those guys. That is the absolute essence of pound for pound. So it's hard to give you an exact ranking exactly because we don't know A, if he would do it, B, if he did do it, how dominant would those wins be? That would also be part of the conversation. And again, maybe some other people also do something similar up a weight class in a way that we just tend to celebrate more. Beating Islam, beating the number one guy in the sport, if you knock him out, going up in weight, I just don't know what would top that, right? That seems way, way too much. But to the point that you raise, that's the kind of thing you're talking about is exactly what pound for pound rankings were made for. It's to find a way to express how good someone is within that, and it would be obviously a very, 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 if not number one, really fucking close, 2 or 3 at worst, right? Any chance Prime Habib beats Prime Izzy? Obviously, there's a size difference, but Habib got his best takedowns along the cage, which is where Izzy's defense was most effective. But I feel Habib would have won that battle eventually. And in open space, similar to how he took down Conor in round one, I feel Izzy wouldn't be able to get back up. The height and reach of Izzy wouldn't definitely be an issue. I don't know. I'll say this: if they fought 10 times, Habib wins at least three of them. You know, at least two of them. At least two of them. So I could see a world where he could do it. I don't know if I would ultimately favor him if they were able to, like, really test that theory, which would have to happen a few times. But I do think that, like, I guess to answer the question, do I think that he is capable, Habib, of beating Izzy, even with the weight disparity? Yes. Yes. Luke, I know it might initially sound silly, unlikely, but I wanted to know your thoughts on a possible Ilya Conor fight. I don't think it's silly at all. Possibly being explored if Conor is able to beat Max. I don't think that this is in any way a silly question. This is a perfect question. Both Ilya and Conor are currently booked just a month apart. Yep. Conor has stated that he wants both of his last 2 fights to be this year. Yep. And I feel like if that is true, UFC would want to optimize his star power by giving one of their current stars the rub, as it were, by beating him. Conor and Ilya would be a huge event, and it also gives Ilya a chance to get a fight under his belt at 170 before a possible Islam fight. Now, the downside is that I really, really want to see Ilya versus Arman, and I feel this possible path would remove that from being a possibility. But anyway, wanted to know both if you thought it likely and how you would feel if it occurred. I'll say this: if Conor wins against Max in, well, now it's June, right? So next month, God, is it? I mean, that's crazy that we're this close to it. If Max wins, and let's say it's spectacular, let's say he starches him, right? And Max is like, I want to fight Topuria, I want to fight for the 155 title. I think it's very likely. Yeah, under that circumstance, I think it's very likely. And understand something, what that would be as an opportunity for Ilya. Dude, like, I know, again, in all the media that I'm talking to, like, no one is, even sports media, they're not really asking about the fights. It's not just political media doing it. Like, they're not asking about the fights. But, like, we all know the reality. Ilya's in the motherfucking main event of this gigantic event. If he performs well there, right, that by itself should lift him to a new level. I mean, that's not a guarantee, but certainly seems within the realm of possibility to me. So if there's a big audience for this, which I think there will be, and if he gets a knockout, which I think is likely, and on all this works together, this should already raise his star profile. And then if you give him a Conor fight, and let's say he beats Conor on the way out, again, these are a gazillion ifs, but okay, dude, like, what would be better for his star power rise than, starching someone, unifying the title on the White House lawn for MMA purposes, certainly anyway, and then going and beating Conor and, wherever the fuck. I mean, like, you know what I mean? It would turn him into a gigantic star. Now, the problem is I don't know how much longer it would keep him in MMA. Like, if you're doing all of this, do you really want to fight Arman Tsarukyan after this? Like, that seems like it's a weird thing. I don't know. But I do think it's definitely possible. The other thing you have to consider, though, is, like, what happens to Islam. So we really just have to see, does Conor win? Does he look good? Does he want this? Does he want to stay at 170? We shall see. Does Islam win? Does he want it? What does UFC want out of Ilya after the White House? Like, there's just a lot of really big questions. I mean, the summer is kind of big, but those 3 guys, I don't really see a world where if he beats Max, they make him fight, or they allow him anyway to fight Islam. I think that seems probably not real, but Ilya versus Islam, we know is possible. And then Ilya versus Conor, I absolutely think is possible. Yes. Thoughts on Strickland not being Israeli enough to be allowed at the White House card? Yeah, this is what I mean. You guys see what I mean? Look who is agitating around this event and getting people to see it in a new light more than anybody else. More than anybody else. by pulling out of the Trump administration the lines that they have set that they don't want anyone to cross who does business with them. And criticism of Israel is just not allowed, you know? And I know everyone's going to say, oh, you know, like, and by the way, people are making this out to be like the UFC pulled him. I doubt that the UFC is the one that actually pulled him. I bet it was the White House. I bet that they had, you know, some kind of discussion about it. And they were like, yeah, there's no fucking way we can let that guy on the thing, because they are, Trump is, I'm sorry to tell everyone, he's Israel's bitch. That's what he is, you know. Oh, you guys see these articles that are coming out with Trump being like, Trump is, he called Netanyahu names on the phone. Dog, did y'all miss all those articles that would come out from Axios, like Biden furious with Netanyahu, and then he wouldn't do shit about it, right? They did that for months. Oh, Joe Biden incandescent with rage towards Benjamin Netanyahu, and then he just approved arms shipment, you know. It's just cover. It's just cover. These are two forces united together. That's what these are. And that's why they're protecting those interests, and that's why Strickland's not invited. It's not really. It's very easy to see. You know, you're not allowed to criticize Israel and do business and be a part of or be near, frankly, the Trump administration. Doesn't work. And I hope all of you out there can see that. They literally won't let Sean show. They didn't say, hey, Sean, you know how you dropped the N-word on the Aiden Ross brand risk thing? They didn't care. They didn't care. Hey, you know how like you were doing ice jokes when you fought a Hispanic opponent? They don't care. Hey, remember you posted a video of you beating up in an MMA fight a transgender person? They didn't care. No, it's Israel. You can't say shit about. Like it's time for everyone to wake up. People still get people with real TDS, which in 2026 Trump derangement syndrome is believing that Trump is anything other than a shit for brain scammer. There's still people that like they're holding on to this thing like he's going to get out of this funk and fix it. Guys, he can't do this. Like they're letting him do what he wants, which people around him did not do the first time. Look at the fucking difference. He's bad at this. He's fucking terrible at this. He can't do it. He's fucking shitty at this job. There is no turnaround coming. It might not get any worse. It might just stay as what it is. That's possible. Or, you know, marginally better, but not really better. That's possible. Like he can't fix this. This is core to his identity. This would be a betrayal of self. This is who he is. And I need all of you who are like, oh, Luke's got TDS. I need you to really noodle this shit through. They had to pick sides between Strickland and fucking Israel. Who did they pick? It wasn't between me and it wasn't like I was going and they were like, oh, well, no, you're some left-wing agitator. No, that's not who it was. It's the fucking American UFC middleweight champion. And we know that the other shit he said was not disqualifying. What are you waiting on? What are you waiting on? Is Sean Strickland the Bill Maher of MMA? He's not as funny or witty as he thinks he is, but occasionally makes a valid point. I don't know if I like this one. And he manages to upset and annoy people from all over the political spectrum. Thanks, Luke, for being unabashed voice of reason, such that I am. No, because the Bill Maher is like a monster Israeli supporter. Like, I know what you mean in a general sense, but no. Strickland's got, he's obviously decidedly right wing, but he at least can see facts for as they are. He can see that it's at a bare minimum troubling what the Epstein files appear to show in a number of different respects, not merely on the child abuse and the various ways in which that gets handed out, but also in the ways which this guy was dealing with various governments, and particularly to what extent he was doing work for Israel, and not just them, but a lot of other actors as well. Like, that's also a gigantic cause for concern too. He can at least see that, and he can see that, like, it's bad for our country to be tied to the fanatical interests of another state that has religious ethno-supremacism at the heart of what they do. That's bad for us. And I think he can see that. So that makes him go counterculture to some things. But Bill Maher is an out of touch, kind of left wing centrist shithead. And he's, if anything, he's got outdated views that are going away. Whereas I feel like Strickland's kind of represents something of a newer vanguard on the right of people who are seeing not merely the problem with the long-standing existing Republican establishment, but now the failures of the Trump administration on top of it. He is something that's a little bit newer in that regard. So I kind of don't think the analogy works on a few levels. Strickland claimed he would beat a prime Anderson Silva because the game has advanced so much. I was a big fan during Anderson's prime, and I disagree with Strickland. Anderson had a legendary chin and very creative striking. I think prime versus prime Anderson wins pretty easily, almost 100% of the time. Do you think Strickland's defense would pose any issues? Strickland's defense would pose any issue for any generation of fighter at middleweight. What generation would have an easy time with it? He's hard to take down. He's hard to hold down. And now, especially, this is not true, as of a few years ago, but certainly let's call it the current version. He's hard to land cleanly on too. He's hard to do anything against. Yes, his defense would absolutely hold up against what Marilla Bustamante is going to get him. Dave Monet is going to get him. Evan Tanner's going to get him. David Loiseau is going to get him. Rich Franklin's going to get him. Like, what are we talking about here? Which generation are we talking about? It just doesn't make sense. So, yes, his defense absolutely would hold up. There's no question in my mind. The question about Silva, though, is to me a little more interesting. Again, it's like if they fought 10 times, how many would they win? I would imagine Silva would win the majority of those. Silva was very, 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 very creative as a striker and very, very tricky, playing with timing, playing with range, playing with looks. He was way ahead of his time. He was innovative and was willing to try and make successful things that seemed impossible. He made a lot of striking that we kind of take for granted. He made the impossible seem possible. And so, if you took Anderson at the best of his era versus Sean at the best of his era, you're kind of comparing two different eras versus pure ability as such. But I still think Silva's creativity would be a problem for Sean. I will say, conversely, if he was having trouble landing on him, like Silva was not that hard to frustrate. He would clown a lot or kind of get shitty in fights a lot when guys wouldn't open up. Like the Demian Maia fight was kind of like a good example of that. Demian's not trying to do the same thing Sean's trying to do, but if Sean's playing prevent defense for a lot of and Anderson can't get a lot going, and then Anderson starts clowning and making bad decisions, yeah, I mean, I can see that too. I just kind of feel like the brilliance of Silva's striking and how clever it was would be a problem the other direction too. Okay, this Erica Kirk thing, this can't be fucking real. I see someone asking me about it. Let me, as of the beginning of this broadcast, that was not real. Is this real? Let's see. No, I see nothing in there in the actual news. I see nothing in the actual news. No. So when it gets reported by a reputable outlet, I'll take a look, but no. So here's the question. Thoughts on Erica Kirk and Spencer Pratt, another politician in association with UFC at the White House event. Spencer Pratt, as I understand it, is a jiu-jitsu black belt, like a real one, and like he really, really trained for a while. So he's actually got some organic ties to MMA. Like, people have organic ties to MMA. You know what I mean? Like, you can't really police that. That's a kind of a real thing. I guess you're asking association with UFC at the White House event. I have not heard exactly what Spencer Pratt going to be in attendance. I guess I don't know. I don't know what to say because I don't even know if these reports are real. Kind of been over this other one, the claw thing in the Eiffel Tower. Let's see. Oh, we did this one. If Hokit beats Lewis, it's him, Volkov, and Pavlovich that are close to a title shot. Assuming Aspinall gets next, how would you matchmake those three guys, which you should get, and which should get to the title eliminator? I would put Okay, so if you have Hokit, Volkov, and Pavlovich, no. So to me, it'd be between Volkov and Hokit, and winner of that. And honestly, Hokit probably wins that one. I mean, there's no guarantees, but are you all going to favor Volkov? You know what I mean? Like, you know, like, no, I wouldn't do that, personally speaking. How do you guys plan for an episode of MK? It's a good question because it's changed a lot over time. Give us some behind the scenes. Honestly, these days, it is almost entirely me. So I mean, it's a complicated answer. It's worked so many ways. Partly, you kind of define the scope of your coverage without officially stating it over time. Like, so for example, on a Friday show, even if it's just an Apex event, you know, you're still going to get a main event preview. You're going to get a full card preview of some capacity. And then we tend to get to the other news stories. And as Brian has departed, but also like, you know, if you look at, you know, we like in all the smoke, there's been kind of a reorientation because they signed a lot of other boxing shows. You know, they don't need us to cover boxing like the way that we used to. It's not, that was a thing that we needed to do when we were part of Showtime, but we're not part of Showtime. We're part of All the Smoke, and All the Smoke's got a gazillion boxing podcast. It just doesn't make sense for All the Smoke for us to do a bunch of boxing coverage anymore. And that'd be true even if BC was still here. That was going to be the case no matter what, right? We'd do more if BC was here, but we would do a lot less than we ever did during the Showtime days. So what I'm trying to point out is like we tend to kind of like, you know, on Monday, if there's fights over the weekend, what are we talking about? Main event. And if it's a big event, we'll do main card return, then a preliminary card topic, and then as such. For the most part, we try to stay away from anything political. That is not a perfect record. Sometimes you have to, but you know, again, that's not a thing that we typically lean into in the show. Believe it or not, we really don't. Sometimes we do, but not, you know, as a general rule, like this is why covering this White House card is so weird, because it's kind of hard to cover the fights when there's not a lot of discussion about them, and most of the discussions about things that are not related to the fights. But we tend to not want to touch that kind of stuff. We have a little bit recently, but it's awkward for us. Like, it's not a thing that the show is designed to do. And so this tends to, like, you know, give us a perspective over what the content would be, no matter if I was making it or not. But what I tend to do is we have a running list of topics. We have a Google Doc. We fill them in through the course of the week. Not always, but sometimes it's just me. Sometimes I'll just do my own Google Doc and I'll put my own stuff in there. And then I'll hit up Long Island. What do you think? I'll hit up whoever the show host is. If it's like Chuck, hey Chuck, what do you think? What should we be covering? What angles? What are we missing? What's most important? What will the fans appreciate? What works for the show? We come up with a list of 5. We shape it. If it's Chuck I'm doing the show with, then I send him everything ahead of time. You know, he'll tweak it. He'll say, I like this, I don't like that. Or sometimes he'll be like, I just like it all. It's good. Let's roll with it. And that tends to be the case of like after a pay-per-view. Like after a pay-per-view, almost the entire show is the pay-per-view. It's fairly easy to figure out how we're going to talk about it at that point. But you know, when the show was 3 times a week and we weren't quite this married to this format, we had to play a lot more with these kinds of considerations. And we would have staff meetings, we would have calls. Brian and I would brainstorm. But at 2 times a week, where you're doing a reaction Monday and then a preview Friday, you know, the guardrails about what kind of works in that format tend to be set for you, both in terms of what the format allows and then what you kind of accustom your audience to expect. I'll do a couple more of these. Why do you think Lonnie Ali supports the Revival Act? I wish I knew. It's a good question, and I don't know the answer, but it's good to have a comment about it. Thoughts on Askren returning to wrestling while being on immunosuppressants, thus making him more susceptible to infections. Plus, it's against a not-so-easy opponent in Bilal. You know, I will say that I find it amazing. I mean, obviously, it's been just wonderful that he has made Ben Askren a comeback. It's been incredible to see, and it really just is, you know, a second lease on life for him in a way that, boy, got real close there, didn't it? And all of this is wonderful. And then you see it gets announced that he's going to go back wrestling, and you're like, well, of course he did, right? Because he's been defying the odds this whole time. And, you know, if this guy can't wrestle, you know, what can he do? This has been his whole life. And, you know, and I don't mean just like actively wrestling, but, you know, being around wrestling mats and coaching and academies and all this kind of stuff. this is what he's built to do. This is what he made his life about. And so he really is just very inspiring. But like I definitely had a conversation with a doctor about this, and they were trying to explain to me that, like, his risk of infection goes up substantially with the double lung transplant. Like, you look at the complications that double lung transplant patients suffer. They have to be on this immunosuppressing medicine at times just to be able to live, and that makes that there's some trade-offs with what you can do with that in terms of your level of activity and who you can be around. Anyway, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what the truth is. I just hope that if he's going to do it, that there's a safe way to do it. If there's not, then that's really troubling. But I'm not a doctor. I don't know how risky that is. I do know that a doctor I spoke to made it seem like this kind of thing would be risky, but I genuinely don't know. I hope it's not. Obviously, that would be terrible. All right. Oh, I do want to answer this one. Or, maybe not. I'll leave it up in case we come back to it. All right. Let me get a sip of the old. Okay. If you want to put something now into the super chat, I'd be so grateful if you did. I look orangey yellow. I look jaundiced. And we'll get to it. Again, if you're a member, you can get around that. So decide how you wish to proceed. All right. Marcus says, in post-win interviews, would Topuria / Poatan / Sean O'Malley, others, stand to gain more maintaining long-term fame from praising or denouncing Trump and admin? I mean, we all know what's going to happen, right? Like, we all know they're going to go in there and then they're all going to lick Trump's balls. Like, we all know that, right? Like, no one who wins is not going to be like, thank you to President Trump, thank you to everyone. And they'll probably say more than that. I suspect that they'll be like actively, part of, like, again, like, what was the reason why Trump was going to so many UFC events between 2021 and 2024, those 4 years? Why did he do that? Well, it's quite obvious. It's not just that they would walk him out and play him his own music and that the commentators would talk about him. Again, they didn't put him in the box. They put him cage side. Part of putting him cage side is not that like you can just see his face there all the time and then the camera goes to him constantly. But it's also that the fighters play a role here. They jump out of the cage. They shake his hand. They tell him how much they love him. They get on the microphone and they're like, you're the greatest, blah, blah, blah. And again, that was during a time of like very pro-Trump fever, a lot of which has broken. They're not going to break it for this one. Like, so part of what the UFC does is they just say, hey, we bring him out to the fights. Everything else that happens is not on us. But they know that, like, this is part of how this whole thing goes, that the fighters wittingly submit to this process and then promote him as well. It's all part of it. That is exactly what's going to happen. Now, like, what should they do long term? You can be grateful to your host and then, you can still be somewhat generic. And I think that would be in their interest. I just don't think that's what's going to happen. I think you're going to get express Trump ball licking. Is the White House event a celebration of America or a celebration of Trump? Guys, it's on Trump's fucking birthday. Guys, why is a UFC event on a fucking Sunday? They could have this on a Saturday. Why not just have this on a Saturday? All UFC events are on Saturdays. Why not just have this on? Because the next day is Flag Day. Have the UFC ever moved their shit ever for Flag Day? They used to hold 4th of July cards. They would do this all the time. I can't tell you how many 4th of Julys I missed, having both being in the Marine Corps and then having to cover fights, during 4th of July weekend. Like, what are we talking about? Obviously it's for fucking Trump's birthday. They're throwing a motherfucking party on Trump's lawn for his fucking birthday. Again, that doesn't mean that, we're gonna, they're saying, we're gonna have, like, all this stuff that's like love letters to America. Yeah, they're gonna do that as like cover for the whole thing because they can't come out and say, hey, this is about Trump's birthday. This is about, giving us, we helped this guy stay out of prison and this is our reward. They're not going to say that. So what they're going to say is, this is about the birth of America. It's on his fucking birthday, which is on a Sunday. Let's use our thinking. I'm not saying you're not, so we're asking the question. I'm saying to the skeptics out there, use your fucking brain, okay? What will the Republican Party do after the Trump cult expires? Civil war. Can they possibly recover after all the crimes they committed and supported? Well, that depends on the opposition party. And I don't know what they're going to do. So that remains to be seen. But they're going to fracture. Who's got the juice that Trump has on that party? Rubio? No. Vance? No. Who? Who is it? Nick Fuentes? He's got some, but no. Because obviously there's a gigantic pro-Israeli coalition inside of the right. No. Like Tucker Carlson? No. Like it's going to fracture. It's going to fracture. And there's going to be jockeying for position. And what wins out will tell you a lot about their future. Did you see Dave Rubin get embarrassed on Jubilee? Yes, I did. Or most of it anyway. I almost felt bad for him until I remembered he's a grifty moron. And he's rich. He's rich. He's wealthy. You don't have to feel bad for him at all. But like, Dave Rubin is a great example of like, I don't know if what will happen as I move further into political coverage. I don't know. Maybe it all works. Maybe it fails. Maybe it's a good idea. Maybe it's a disaster. I don't know. But like I've said this before, like how do you learn about a subject to become an expert on it? You have to study it for decades. You have to go to school for it. At least, academically, you have to go to school for it. You have to study it. You have to be you have to be in it. You have to be around it. And like only after decades, years and years and years, can you ever get real subject matter knowledge. I can't do that. It's too late for me. I can't do that. I can be like halfway literate on things, but I can't do that. But like, look at who the right promotes. Tim Pool, Matt fucking Walsh, Dave Rubin. Like, these are not intellectual titans at all. At all. At all. These guys are not difficult to beat in debates. You can see how easy it is to beat Dave Rubin. Very, very simple. Like, so this is why I don't have nearly as much imposter syndrome. Like, look at and these guys are all wealthy and like have massive audiences. And Michael Knowles, another one of them, like they look at the quality that they promote. They don't give a shit, except when it gets confronted with reality in a way, or at least a format that requires it. And then you can see what it really all amounts to. Dude, this guy has a gigantic audience, Dave Rubin. He's got a much bigger audience than I do. He's made a lot more money. He's been eminently more successful. This is why people are like, oh, this guy's much bigger than you, they're more successful. Yeah, but dude, so is Dave Rubin. And Dave Rubin, I'm not even sure if he's got a mammalian brain that functions. He appears to be quite fucking stupid. And I'm supposed to be worried about my lack of subject matter expertise. Like I can beat those guys all day long. That's easy. Did you see Scott Cooker's interview with Ariel Helwani? I did. He said that $60 million will be enough for 5 years. Yeah, no, it won't, because he's got vast experience in running a fight promotion. I'm still skeptical. I'm sorry to say, I would, again, maybe I will be proven wrong. It wouldn't be the first time, and it certainly would not be the last. But no, I don't think that is enough money to compete in any kind of interesting way. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I'd be curious to see how this goes. Luke, I just joined. Been a fan for a while, and I'm proud to be a part of the family. Thank you, Diego. Appreciate that. Sanchez? With Dana White's I don't give a fuck attitude, and with TKO trying to maximize shareholder profits, are these the rumblings of Dana and TKO possibly looking to cash out and sell UFC after the Paramount deal ends? I think there's a strong likelihood of a sale after that period. Not immediately after per se, but like, do they just get out after that? Sure. I think that is very, very possible. It's really hard to say. It's just too far away to really know how any of this is going to go. But sure, I could easily see them just turning and burning it when, the value of their leadership no longer needs to be there, or no longer is there. Gaethje seems to be 3 to 4 inches taller than Ilya and probably outweighs him by 20 pounds. Do you think that can play a factor, or will Ilya be too sharp? Dude, like, how many opponents have been like taller than Ilya? A lot. And the weight could matter if they wrestle. I don't think that they will, at least not much. So it's not to say that like there's nothing to it, but like that, it should not affect a guy of this caliber like that. Sean Strickland might be the first real test of whether the UFC still answers to its fan base or to the Trump regime. Who the fuck do you think they literally, guys, Guys. I want to be nice here, and I will be, because I don't think it's a bad question. But it speaks to something that I'm going to put it back on the screen here. Okay, give me a second. I've been talking to a lot of people about this event. A bunch of interviews are recorded today, some yesterday. There's going to be a bunch coming out next week, and I'm doing even more. I'm doing like nonstop fucking interviews next week. As I mentioned, no one's asking about the fights. But what the other thing they are doing is kind of interesting to me. Namely, they are asking me, like, hey, do you think this event might be a little risky for the UFC in showing that there might be some political overtones to their product? And I'm like, you have to be fucking kidding me. You have to be fucking kidding me. Lady or sir, that train left the station a long fucking time ago. I've actually looked into this question. What is the most political sports organization in American history? What would that be? What would it be? Now, it depends what you mean by political. The Negro Leagues were not expressly political, but you can imagine at the time in which they were operating, there was just a political nature to their existence. That could be one example. Another example could be, for example, the WNBA players, wearing T-shirts against their owner, and trying to essentially unseat them electorally. That's very political, but that's also a very different thing than the organization itself. So like that definitely counts. And also the NBA going like all in on social justice messaging circa 2020 for a season, that definitely counts too. But that only lasted basically a season. Dana has been promoting Trump for 10 years himself, and for the UFC we're up to 8 years. This event exists because this is the culmination of the long-standing political turn that the organization has taken. Why do I bring all of this up? Like that ship is fucking sailed, bro. Toothpaste is out of the tube, whatever metaphor you would like. This event is the culmination, the long-standing culmination of those efforts. The reason I bring this up is look at this. Sean Strickland might be the first real test of whether the UFC still answers to its fan base or to the Trump regime. Guys, Dana White gets asked about his Trump support, and his answer is, I don't give a fuck. He gets asked about, hey, should you guys be using AI on any of your promotional material? And what was his answer? What was his answer to the fan base? What was his answer? It was verbatim, shut the fuck up and watch the fights. That was verbatim. Yet, when Trump says, why isn't Derek Lewis on this card? Here comes Dana White running. Oh, here comes one of our American champions who has been, he's been something of a capricious supporter, but is a supporter, wants to be there as an American champion. No, he's criticized Israel and noted that Trump is, the all-star or one of the all-stars of the Epstein files. No, he can't be there. Guys, this question has been answered. This question has been answered. Now, I think there might be something of a response, not an unfair one, that there is still a lot of symmetry between these entities, that they are not necessarily not at all in direct opposition, although there is some friction between them in terms of what they want from the UFC. But if it comes down to the fan base, which they know they've got a monopoly in, and they don't have to answer for shit, and they're literally already telling fans to shut the fuck up if you don't like their AI slop, versus Trump says jump, they say how high. This has been answered. There's not mystery about this. This is resolved. What's the rest of the question? Do they reverse course because of the backlash, or are they willing to alienate their core audience? Guys, they got Thomas Massey out of Kentucky for talking about the Epstein files in Israel. You think they give a fuck about Sean Strickland? They helped unseat a congressman who'd been there for 14 years? Maybe longer, something like that. for the exact same shit that Strickland's talking about. Do you think they give a fuck about what Sean Strickland is saying? And on the Israel issue, I mean, I don't know about all the shit he said about Jews. I don't know about that. But on assessing the crimes of the government of Israel, I share at least that sliver of the conversation, of the argument. Like, on that account, he is quite right. This has been answered. They'll never bow down to the fan backlash because they know the fan backlash won't last. And their answer is going to be the same thing that it always is. Where are you going to go? What do you make of the attempts to discredit Graham Plattner? I did a whole video on this, specifically the one that keeps getting regurgitated about his VA disability and how he's cheating the system by continuing to work. If he is, then I know a million vets who are. Okay, I just want to be very clear about that. Listen, I want to say something up front. I made a whole video about this. There apparently are supposed to be, I don't know if they came out yet. Let's see. Do we have them yet? Let's see. I haven't seen it yet, but there's been rumoring. Oh, here we go. Plattner is 100% VA, is on 100% VA disability. Crazy you can be 100% disabled and endure the physical and psychological rigors of a highly contested Senate campaign. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of guys who are on 100% disability who are more or less as disabled as him. That doesn't necessarily absolve him, but it doesn't make his case unique. Here's what I'll say. There's a couple of things here. Number one, I don't really like Plattner. I don't really like him. I don't buy his tattoo story. I just don't buy his tattoo story at all. That, he didn't know what it was when he got it. First of all, I don't really believe that, but okay, that one is at least plausible enough to have deniable plausibility. But then you didn't really get it covered up until it was a recent scandal. Like, there's no way a guy who has been, like, you didn't take your shirt off at some kind of pool or beach or family function or anything and no one said anything to you, no significant other. Like, I just don't buy he didn't eventually know what it was. And so I think he knew what it was, and I think he just let it rock. And that is fucking gross at a bare minimum. That is fucking gross, and it could be a lot worse. I just don't buy his tattoo story. Now, the shit about the Porta-Johns, I don't know. I've not interrogated the VA disability, the Veterans Administration. I've not interrogated that one, so I'll look into that one. There are certainly a lot of issues around a guy who's very sketchy, but here is what is also true. Okay. If you live in the state of Maine, and this does not mean you have to support Graham Plattner, but I'm just trying to explain, like, why are people interested in him? Because if you live in the state of Maine, you have to know, as long as Susan Collins and certainly even Janet Mills too are in power, you will never have health care extended beyond whoever can get it now in the way that they can get it. You'll never have it. Never. You will never have somebody who stands up to big tech. You will never have somebody who stands up to Israel. You have someone who has voted to cut Medicaid and Medicare for almost their entire political career. Somebody who has voted to support Israel almost their entire career. Somebody who is married to a corporate lobbyist. Somebody who had the ability to shut down the Iran war and never did. Someone who says they're concerned about ICE and then sits on the appropriations committee and does dick about it. Somebody who sent American troops to go fucking destroy the Middle East vis-a-vis the war in Iraq with George Bush. You will never have the things that we should have. You will never have it as long as people like Susan Collins are in office. You will never have, with the Democratic Party, as long as it's maintained and controlled by the people who run it now, you will always have a party that's going to lay down in front of the face of the opposition party. You will always have it. Do you think Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are going to stand up to Israel? Do you think that? Do you think they will even stand up to private equity? Do you think that they will stand up against any malignant force and wealth concentrating force in this country, whether it comes through private equity or some other kind of financial instrument or through the takeover of big tech or through American hegemony, do you think that they will do? You have to know. You have to know. You will never, ever, ever get those things as long as those people are in power. And how do we know that? They've been in power for decades and they have fought it tooth and nail. Right. That is why people like Graham Plattner are popular. Now, for my money, somebody who I trust much more and has a lot of the same views is somebody like Abdul El Sayed, who is captain of the wrestling team in high school, Rhodes Scholar, has every credential in the book, and wants to fight for Medicare for all and wants to challenge he calls it the genocide. Like he doesn't, that to me is more of my kind of candidate. I feel much more comfortable supporting a guy like that. I don't live in Maine, so it's not my cross to bear. I don't trust Graham Plattner, just to be very obvious with you, to be clear with you, but people getting out here and being like, how can he be popular? How could he not? How could he not? The Democratic brand is a dead fucking end. We know we have now been given incontrovertible truth. When it's time to stand up, you will lay down. You will lay down every time. When it comes to delivering the transformational change that we need as a country, you will never deliver it because you have decided you would rather be aligned with the right than with the progressive left. How could a Graham Plattner not be popular under a consideration like that? Like, they make dead ends for people and they leave them in hopeless situations with no accountability for who is there. And then they wonder, why don't they support someone who's more clean cut? Because voters are clearly making the articulation that this guy, problematic as he may be, and it might get worse, problematic as he may be, at least we know that if it comes time for a vote to make Medicare accessible for all, or some other kind of healthcare that would be universalist in nature, there's other mechanisms you could use. We know he'll vote for it, at least what seems like we think he'll vote for it. It seems like he will, right? We know Susan Collins will not. She won't. She never will. The change that is necessary for society, frankly, to function and for our politics to ever reach some kind of level of health, these people will never, ever, ever deliver it. So I think we should get behind candidates who we can trust, reasonably trust anyway, and that have the right ideas. And, for me, Plattner is very much not that guy. But like, how can people not like Susan Collins? How could they ever? A failure in every possible way. And someone who will not allow you to dream of a better future. What could be more of an indictment on a politician than one that extinguishes the dreams of a better future? Thank you. Welcome to the party. Will the UFC just have to watch Conor leave and become a free agent? I think that they've prepared for this for a long time. Could they do something to retain him, stall his last fight? Wouldn't be surprised if they came up with something fishy last minute. My understanding of talking to folks is the deal that he has reached with UFC is to have this one next month and then to have his second one by the end of the year. That's what I've been told. And so he'd be just kind of done now. I think that they've prepared for it. I mean, listen, they got the most out of him. How much does he have left? Probably maybe some, maybe more than we think. It's possible, but maybe not much either. Maybe just a handful of these. And if he's kind of at the end, then they might just be like, you know what? We got the very best of what we could get from him. Someone else can have it. It's okay. We don't really need it anymore. And honestly, yes, anyone would benefit from him at the box office, obviously. But does UFC need him? They don't need him. Is CJI done? If it is, that's terrible news for BJJ. I don't know, but Craig's going to be in town next week. I'm going to try and see if I can get a chance to talk to him. Luke, how poor do you think the cognitive dissonance will be when there is an openly gay bi male UFC champion if a former champion who still rates highly came out today? I don't think it'd be a death sentence. I think there'd be a lot of negativity around it. I think there'd obviously be a lot of negativity around it, but it would also be partly how they handle it. Do they make a show of it? Do they hide it? Do they talk about it? Do they not talk about it? Even if it's no, it's public that there's no. I think that would end up being the most defining thing about it. But there would definitely be um, um, there would definitely be some blowback for sure. Will you be on Breaking Points next week? Well, I'll tell you, Kyle Kalinske messaged me and kind of kicked the tires. Obviously, he doesn't work for Breaking Points, but I don't have a close relationship with Kyle, but I've got a friendly relationship with Kyle. I've gone back and forth sharing information with Crystal Ball a couple of times, but I've never really talked to her outside of being on Crystal Kyle and Friends. Kyle, I've spoken to a little bit more. And so he hit me up and he was like, would you be interested if they go this direction? And I said, sure. I haven't heard yet. I would make time for them, obviously. That'd be kind of a bit of a dream, to be honest with you. So I hold that show in very high esteem. Can you shed some light into your thoughts on the LA mayoral race? I don't have great ones. Opinions on each candidate and their proposals. This is not a race I've closely followed. I know it's gotten a lot of attention. I was just in LA for what it's worth. That doesn't mean much, but it was beautiful to see. I thought it looked nice, but I recognize LA has had some challenges, to put it mildly. There's been cost of living challenges. There was the fire challenges. There are homeless challenges. I mean, there's a lot that's going into it. So I recognize that Karen Bass's mayorship is, it's ripe for the picking. I just think we need to really get away from electing fucking entertainers. I just think as a general rule, left or right, I'm not really interested in that. But I don't have strong commentary about Spencer Pratt's platforms because I've not really paid close attention to them. And so I'd just be speaking out of turn. Do you think parity parity, Parity in the UFC is hurting its product? Sort of. People say they don't like squash matches, but love the highlights and drama that comes with an upset. Yes. If parity as such can be a problem, for example, in like the championship ranks too. If you got like 4 guys that are just handing the belt to one another, it's not quite as fun versus having like one guy hold it for a long time or one guy take it from another guy who's held it for a long time. But just playing hot potato with it tends to take away a little bit of the enjoyment. So yes, some level of you want some level of parity, but too much of it can become a very backwards problem. MMA's problem isn't lack of competition, it's a lack of non-Western competition. Pride gave MMA a completely different center of gravity, but Pride's not even possible today. Even if you had the money, it wouldn't be possible. Jake Paul is building MVP and he's out here glazing Trump. That's not the problem either. Glazing Trump is not, for the most part, is not going to be disqualifying in combat sports and certainly not in MMA. That's not really the problem. The best fights in the world, when Pride was at its peak, the best fights in the world happened there. That's not possible now. You could get Sakakibara, you could get all those donks. You could get Fuji TV back up in this bitch. You could recreate it. It's not the same. It can't be. LT, can we get an LT is pissed rant on Spencer cucking? Again, I'm not, guys, I just don't have time to pay attention to everything. How the fuck as a society are we this dumb and lack the ability for critical thought and discourse? I think I'm becoming too nihilistic. The reality, though, is a Spencer Pratt is not even possible in a world where Karen Bass does a better job. That is not me endorsing Spencer Pratt. Certainly not. But he's only possible when the people in charge have done enough to fuck up that you're willing to go outside of the norm because the norm has just failed you so thoroughly. So I'm happy to be like, hey, is this the right guy for the job? I don't know. I've not really looked at the stuff, but again, as a general rule, I don't think entertainers should be the kind of people we need to be electing to office. But at the same time, I can say that and also say you might want to reflect on why he's so popular. What are your thoughts on Coker's new MMA org? We've kind of been over this one. Hey, Luke, 35 years after his passing, the material of Bill Hicks seems to have become more prescient. Who is the prophetic or clarion voice for this generation? I feel like the comedians have really let me down. Bill Burr let me down. I was going to maybe say Bill Burr, but He went over to Saudi Arabia like a pathetic fucking idiot. He let me down. Some comedians I like aren't trying to be this, like Sam Morril. I like him, or Morel. I like him a lot, but he's not trying to be that. I don't think Rogan is that, certainly. There used to be a George Carlin. Dennis Miller did it for a while, and then after 9/11, he completely lost his mind. I don't think Jon Stewart is that really either. Chris Rock is not that. Dave Chappelle thought he was that for a while, but he's kind of flamed out. The comedians of this generation, to me, are cultural failures. They're commercially successful. I'm not even saying that they're necessarily unfunny, but when it came time to being culturally novel and appropriate voices for against these mobilizing forces of the tech right, and the movements that they have pushed, they all failed on the job completely, all of them. So I don't know who it would be. Maybe there's somebody I'm not thinking of, but no, they all failed. DJ Luke, do you happen to remember the name of the handheld barbell you showed off? Oh, fuck. I said I was going to get it. What the fuck was that? Hold on. No, I don't. I promise. Okay. Othello, please send me a screenshot of this. I'll have it ready for next time. Saul, like a GMK all day. Did you watch Harry Novak vid? Any thoughts? If yes, I don't think I did. I apologize. Luke, what's your pulse on how people feel about the White House card around DC? They fucking hate it. My neighbors are asking me about it, and they're repulsed. Dude, I'm trying to explain this shit to people. Like, you don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. I'm not asking anybody to agree with this. I'm trying to make points to you, and I hope that they are persuasive. But if they're not, there's not much that I can do beyond just trying to make a case for it and then let the chips fall where they may. I'm trying to let you know, guys, Trump is not popular here. And when I say not popular, I mean loathed. You could literally walk into any room here filled with DC residents, and you could just start talking anti-Trump, and no one's going to stop you. The people of this city do not like this fucking guy. And again, I'll admit it, the fountains are on. Those are nice, but this is an occupied city. That's how people here feel. That's how you should understand it. I'm not saying like fucking Gaza. I don't mean in that particular sense, but they feel like there are hostile they are, like the Republicans in Congress fucking with our budget, causing all kinds of problems for no particular reason, trying to change our laws constantly as well, which they are also doing. And then Trump just, completely manhandling people here with that surge he did last August, then leaving the National Guard here, which is causing an enormous amount of money and literally, there's a new study that was shown, does literally nothing for violent crime. It made a difference in property crime. That's great. But this seems like an awfully expensive solution for that. Dude, if you go everywhere around this city, there's artwork and posters on every corner mocking him. If you guys are coming to DC, you will see it. Go anywhere in Union Market area. Go anywhere in Noma. Go anywhere in DuPont Circle. Go anywhere in fucking Georgetown. Go anywhere. You will see anti-Trump art and rhetoric and shit everywhere. And that's not just because of partisan differences, although those don't help, but it's also because of, taking over the East Potomac Golf Club, or the East Potomac. It's more than just a golf club. It's the whole park, the East Potomac Park, putting his name on the Kennedy Center, all the things I've mentioned before. Dude, this drives people here fucking crazy. Like, just coming in there and fucking with the city in the way that he is, to say nothing of how the Republicans in Congress have fucked with the budget under his leadership. Dude, people here are agitated about it. No, I mean, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. This is being promoted nationally, and ultimately whatever the national audience says is what will be the defining way in which this is understood. Fair enough. No question. But you're asking how my neighbors feel? Bro, they can't wait till the shit is over with and Trump is gone from here forever. Like, that's the only, and much worse than that, actually. However much you think I talk badly about him, It gets, I mean, I'm relatively mild compared to what my neighbors say. Yeah. They detest everything about him. Do you think the Republican candidate doing well in California is a bad sign for the Dems in the midterms? No, I think the California Democratic Party is a fucking disaster. No, that's what I think. I don't think it means much. Well, I mean, it's not insignificant, but they elected Arnold Schwarzenegger for crying out loud, like, and other Republicans too. It would not necessarily be all that surprising. LT, as I head into work to chef it up for some clients, your content helps me get through the day. Cheers to you, my brother. Tomorrow, as a washed 40-year-old degenerate, I'm going on my first date. Hell yeah, brother. Have a good one, and thank you for your support. Thoughts on skeptics making a big deal out of Poetan's weight and or appearance, content farming of a genuine intrigue? In my opinion, he'll be at normal light heavyweight fight night weight. What do you think? Not necessarily. I think he'll be normal, but like normal-ish. But if you're trying to make 205, you're not going to be mid 240s the next day. You might be 240 2 weeks after it. Like you can get to 240 quickly, but not the next day. And I just wonder what this does to a guy's speed, footwork. I'm talking about Poetan's, not punching power. Not punching power. It's always pretty good. Not punching resilience, which I think will be, obviously it was compromised at middleweight. I don't think it's going to be compromised as such at heavyweight. But Gane is naturally fleet of foot and can do that for 5 rounds. Dude, that's a tough fight for Poetan. I think people are kind of sleeping on that a little bit. So I don't think it's going to be like some disaster, but if the fight has to go 5 rounds and the margin of difference between how fast Gane can touch and go is just so because of the dynamics of how heavyweight works for both him and Poetan, how do you solve that problem? That's an interesting one. So I think it's really, that fight is super intriguing for any number of reasons, not least of which is that one. I like that fight. So what measures will be in place to offset the heat on the 14th? As of right now, I'm seeing 87 degrees. If it's 87 degrees, then by nightfall, it'll be, high 70s. And that's really not that big a deal. Now, that weather report can change, and it probably will between now and then. But if that's the worst they have to deal with, that's no big deal. There are certain kinds of ways in which you can diminish that in the crowd. My sister had a restaurant where they had an outdoor patio, and then they would put this like steam, this cold air steam, where you could barely feel it, but it would actually lower the temperature on the porch by up to like 4 to 5 degrees or something. Like it actually had a pretty big effect. So you can do things like that in the audience, but you can't do that in the octagon. Like it will fuck up everything inside of it. So those bubbas just have to deal. Like they just have to learn how to deal. There's really no in between. Thoughts on the daily damage done to our military by Hegseth? Will we ever recover from this? I think the thing that I would point to as something to pay attention to in all of this, if I may, is look at how many rotations on naval vessels are being consistently extended. There are some of these people that should have been home a year ago, not much less 6 months ago, now up to a year and potentially even longer than that before they can get back. This is going to destroy morale. You have to know that. You have to know that if you keep people on 6-month rotations and you extend them for another 6 months and then you extend them for another 6 months, where they're literally protesting on the fucking boat by clogging up the sewage system on there. Like, what does that tell you about morale? You don't have to take my word for it. Look at them. I worry. I do think it's recoverable, but I worry. How would you unclog the log jam of the top of the heavyweight and welterweight? I think we did heavyweight already. What would your next title fight and eliminator be for each one? For welterweight, so if they're going to do Islam, Ian Gary, then that would depend on whether Ilya wins. If they want to stick within welterweight, then you would have Morales fight one more time, and then if he wins that, he gets the winner. If not, I figure you have to figure out something else at that point. But that's the way I would go. And then at heavyweight, you run back. Whoever wins this fight at the White House fights Tom Aspinall, and then the winner of that fights Hokut versus Volkov. Also, would you scrap women's 135, especially with Vieira getting cut? Not yet, but I don't think it's as far as people think. Or I don't think it's as sturdy as some people imagine it. One more. Luke, is anyone going to ask about Ali's connections to 9/11, Kadyrov, or anything along those lines? You mean because of the White House stuff? Would it be unwarranted given that this is a highly political patriotism rally? Well, I don't think that. I just think if you see him on the lawn, that would be interesting. I think that might be interesting. But absent that, I mean, well, he was already in the White House. They already let him in the White House, you know. So I guess you probably will see him on the lawn. Yeah, I suspect that you will. You know, listen, obviously, I want to go on the record and say this. The very best thing for everybody, me, you, UFC, the government, the Trump administration, MMA fans everywhere, the best thing that could happen is the event goes off without a hitch. And I think that it will. And I'm hopeful that it will. I want to be on the record that I think that that's the most important thing and the likeliest thing, but certainly the most important thing. I want a safe event that, you know, listen, some people are going to get hurt. It's prize fighting in the octagon I'm referencing, obviously, but you know, I want a safe event for everyone. I want a fun event for everyone. I truly mean that. I don't want something not good happening to that event is nothing I would ever support under a million fucking years, right? Like, again, I want to be clear. I don't, the fights themselves don't bother me as such. It's the union between them that led to this that I want everyone to focus on, but not the fight. But at the same time, like, dude, they've got a monster security challenge. I mean, this is a gigantic security challenge. This is just getting 4,000 people on the White House lawn and how you protect it. All of those people on the ellipse and how you protect it. Like, again, I've gone to the ellipse for the national the national Christmas tree lighting. I take my family there every winter. There's no one like checking IDs. There's no one wanding you. You know what I mean? There's no security at all. Well, that's not true. There's security down by the White House, obviously, but like on the ellipse side, just walking to the tree, there's nothing. You know, I don't know how that's going to go. Also, not for nothing, but like you can't sell refreshments on the White House or on the ellipse. Like all the vendors have to be outside. Like, you know, what does that do for people who might be hot and, you know, need water as a thing? And then also, like, you know, this is a very exposed area, 15th Street, 17th Street, and then excuse me, Constitution. That's the area we're talking about here. Because on the back side of the White House, I mean, yes, there's that too, but I suspect some of that might be closed off. You know, because they often do that. They often close off the backside. But so what you're talking about here is 15th, 17th, and then Constitution. Like, there's just a lot of people there. I mean, you know, this is a huge, and again, they've done inaugurations. They've done, you know, a million concerts out there before, not on the ellipse per se, but on the National Mall, which is just across the street. You know, they've done all that. So it's not like they're not used to this kind of thing. But dude, this is an extraordinary challenge. You've got big portions of the government all visibly co-located with one another. And I just don't know, you know, that's a lot of security to cover. And I certainly hope that they will. I know that they can, you know, but like, it's just a big job. I'll put it that way. It's a big job. If you could travel back in time specifically for the purposes of trying different cuisines, when and where would you go? This was before my time, but from what I understand, Pizza Hut in the 80s was God tier. Pizza Hut in the 80s was God tier, in part because of the experience. Like, everyone sat together, they brought the pie to you, you all shared it there. It was delicious. That's definitely true. I don't know if there's like, most of the improvements in food have been pretty substantial. I don't know if I've got a better one than that. I mean, fast food in the 80s and 90s, the atmosphere inside those restaurants was so much better. There was playgrounds and everything. Dude, this is kind of funny. Like, if you go to Colombia, one thing that really has surprised me is mall culture, like the shopping mall is completely alive. It's the 90s in Colombia when it comes to mall culture. They're always packed. There's always teenagers in there. There's all the things that a thriving mall should have, not just a bunch of shops. People all going to the movies. There's, like, you know, places to drop off your kids. Those places are fucking packed to the rafters. Some of the best restaurants in town are in, like, the Andino Mall, for example. Like, you know, out in Bogota, like, dude, mall culture is alive and well. And, you know, part of that is, you know, like, if you go to, so like one of their big chicken joints, like fast food chicken joints, is called Frisbee, spelled Frisby. People will tell you it's the best fried chicken in the world. It's absolutely not. That's not true at all. But almost every Frisbee I've ever been to has like a giant playground, and all the seats are kind of nice. Like, it's still a place that you want to go. Whereas if you go to McDonald's now, You're not even ordering off somebody. You just punch off of a screen, you get a receipt, then they just deliver you your shit. And then, there's probably a homeless guy sleeping on the fucking floor in the back. Like, it's like, who would want to? It's like the most impersonal awfulness. They don't have any of that there, or at least not nearly as much. And it's kind of a fun thing to go still see. A lot of the conversation with Poatan versus Gane is that Alex hasn't fought someone with that kind of movement. But isn't it true the other way around too? And isn't that more problematic? It's always going to be better if you have open movement for the guy who's fleeter of foot and can touch and go. That doesn't make Poatan an easy fight by any stretch of the imagination, but it does tend to favor Gane in that particular respect. How does peak Khabib versus peak Ilya go? We don't know. We don't know until he fights Arman. I tend to think that there's a good shot Ilya wins that one, but we don't know if he can be broken down over time, like if he fades after 3 rounds. We don't really know. We don't know. But I think Ilya can win that one for sure. Big Luke, what are your thoughts on Bryce Mitchell denouncing Trump, but also saying he wouldn't mind fighting on the White House card? Seems so contradictory. His argument is coherent, which is like, I don't think that the government should be in the business. Rather, I don't think that they should be in the business of trying to entertain people. And like, people are like, oh, this is a good critique. It's a reasonable critique, but it's not quite right. Like, for example, here in DC, for just to take it, every July 4th, the government has a fund that puts on a fireworks show for everyone. Like, dude, everybody likes this. I like it. All my neighbors like it. Every administration does it. It's not like a thing that ever has to be kind of thought about. Trump is actually making the one for this year. It's supposed to be even bigger and even longer than normal. But whatever. Like, everyone does it. It's not like entertainment as such. But then you have the Marine Corps band that performs. You have the 8th and I Marines that perform. Like, you can't have a government that has no form of entertainment that is imaginable. I understand what he's saying. It's very different than taking a private company and then using its services on government land. That this feels decidedly different. I understand, but like, no entertaining is too literal of a thing to follow. But at least he was trying to think through it coherently and cogently, and I think that he did. It's a reasonable-ish critique. It doesn't really work to its fullest extent, but it's a lot more thoughtful than what a lot of other people have offered, even if it is contradictory, in the sense that he would still perform. No question, just support. Keep doing what you're doing, Devil. Thank you, ma'am or sir. I appreciate it. Hey, Luke, what else would you add to a shrimp and tuna pizza? The garbage can. The garbage can. Luke, what do you make of Trump's sudden shift toward diplomacy? Sudden shift toward diplomacy with Iran. Do you think he genuinely wants a deal, or is he trying to cool things down until after Freedom 250? I mean, certainly he's looking for the best optics possible. This is over. This has been over since March 19th, and the Iranians know it, and we know it too. The question is just how we get out of it and when. And that is what Trump is trying to basically avoid, is on some level, we're not even going to be able to manage what we had under the JCPOA. There's no way the Iranians are going to agree to those kinds of terms. They'll agree to some of the same kinds of things, but not nearly as favorably. And again, Trump knows it and the Iranians know it, and you should all know it too. We're just kind of in this holding pattern because, I think Trump is just trying to delay the inevitable as long as possible. But like, make no mistake about it, this is a historic defeat for the United States. And brings me no joy to say it. Zero joy. It's actually quite painful to say, but it is true. This is an unequivocal defeat. We had a scenario where now we were all in. We had a military posture in these places. We've been beaten out of our facilities. We had an alliance with the GCC countries that was, you work with us, we'll provide security. We didn't do it. And not only did we not do it because we didn't do it because we couldn't do it. And part of the reason why we couldn't do it is because we depleted our own reserves to protect Israel more than Israel depleted their own reserves. We then also completely damaged our relationship with our Asian allies, taking out THAAD radar systems and others, which changes our force posture there, to say nothing of what this situation has required the Korean and the Japanese government to do, and then directly working with you. They had to cut a deal. They had to cut deals with the Iranian government in the way that they did, and what this might do to undermine the petrodollar, among a number of other problems, which is that like yes, the Strait of Hormuz will eventually be opened. It will never be opened the way it was before. The Iranians now control this channel in a way that they never did. None of that will change. None of that can be fixed. None of that is ever going back. This is a historic defeat for us. We're just waiting to see exactly what ways it's as bad as it could be, or maybe not in some other respects. That's it. It's over. Robert Kagan, who is not a guy whose analysis I would ordinarily share, he's been a big neocon. He has an article about this where he has thought this whole thing through and showed it. It's over. It's over. The whole thing is over. We can't win, and we didn't win. And now the only question is, how bad is the damage? Is he trying to minimize that ahead of an event like this? I'm certain that he is. You said Paramount paid way too much for the UFC. I'd imagine it's the same for the potential Warner Brothers acquisition as well. Isn't this a one-way ticket to bankruptcy? Thanks, King Donk. I mean, monopoly confers a number of advantages, and the Warner Brothers thing would be just an overwhelming amount. I mean, they've overpaid for a number of different assets, you know. Like the UFC would not be the only one, and all of them are regime aligned. So to me, it's like people got really bitter about that when I said it on Pablo Torre's podcast, but it's like that's not the only thing that they overpaid for. They did this in a number of different places. You know, Bari Weiss being one of them. Any other international fans kind of loving the fact that the last scene at the White House will be an American pasted to the canvas by the foreigner? Some might. I think it should be expected for most American fans. Luke, do you think one of the biggest problems in modern society is social media, internet? There's no question. Seems like our information system is just shot and we don't have a shared reality. There is no denying. I mean, dude, what has social media been good for? It was fun for a while, and now it's just an information system, left and right. That is, I mean, not saying that they're all equally problematic, but they are both equal contributors, or not. I should say they're both contributors to the problem. It's certainly not got no partisan valence in that sense, because the information systems, while sometimes are trying to provide space for one ideological direction or the other, but often they're just trying to do the same thing, which is just, you know, maximum views at the expense of information quality. You know, we know that it causes cognitive impairments for long-term use. We know that people can, you know, isolate themselves. They can doom scroll, which can be bad for their mood. You know, you're getting the information fidelity is poor. You know, the ways in which it can disrupt people's lives and at large, I think even society, I think we're barely even scratching the surface and understanding how bad all of this is for us. And I think it puts people at each other's throats in ways that we're not necessarily supposed to be. Yeah, I don't have anything really nice. I honestly want to get off of it as much as possible. I don't know how much it is possible, but if they made it a law, you could never do social media again, I don't think I would cry. Look, I think I'd favor current Habib over current Izzy. Yeah, maybe. That's not saying that much, but maybe. Do you think chances are Max shows up to the Conor fight like he did in the second Dustin fight, a featherweight who didn't cut? If so, I feel like he'll underperform, or does he bulk? I think that lesson will impart something for this one, but even then, he's still manipulating his weight. It'd be more a question for the next fight, not this one. But the question is also like what are you going to get with Conor? I mean, hasn't fought in 5, hasn't won in almost 7. The last time we saw him, he suffered a catastrophic injury. He's had any number of setbacks outside of the cage since then. He's closer to 40 than he is 30. Like, dude, what the fuck are we going to get from him? That is, to me, like gigantic. I mean, yes, the Max question is an X factor, and it does matter. But relative to the other ones, it's like, how do you even parse all of this? Your interview on CBC was a turn I didn't expect. I enjoyed it. The interviewer was more informed than I would have expected. Yes, I did CBC's Front Burner podcast, which I'm told is a big one in Canada. Luke, has your relationship to masculinity changed as you've gotten older? Yes, of course. With all love, you seemed like a naturally aggressive, intense person. How do you channel that in a healthy, non-shitty way? I am much less aggressive than I used to be. Much less aggressive. One thing that you often hear. Well, how do I answer this? When you have a child, there's biological research to defend this claim. your testosterone naturally goes down. And scientists actually think that it might be part of an evolutionary adaptation to make fathers more conscientious. I don't know exactly what the current research shows, but that was something that was introduced to me previously. And you can feel it when you have a kid too, like how your body changes in that way. Um, if that kind of a trade-off makes me a better father, then I'll take it. It's a trade-off that you're willing to make. Um, but like my understanding of what actual masculinity looks like has changed a lot. You think of it when you're younger, and I know I did. You think of it more in outwardly performative ways. I mean, you think about internally too, but it's really about how you dominate everything around you. How you peacock, how you control your professional environment, how you might be controlling to a degree, or at least project strength anyway, in your personal environment, how you project strength when you enter a room, how you project strength with your choices and your interests and whatnot. And I just think that's somebody who's initially feeling what masculinity feels like, but not applying it, I think, as intelligently as they could. And I've come to a place over time that there are, to me, markers of masculinity that tend to endure. But the ways in which those can manifest themselves are so vast as to defy ordinary categorization. You can be somebody, to me, it's not just strength as such, like physical strength or standing up for what you believe in, but it's the pursuit of a virtuous world where your oneself is trying to attain virtue. I don't mean virtue signaling. That's not what I mean. I mean, even if no one's around, and it's the strength to see that world made alive. But how that can manifest itself is so vast as to be honestly not even really a function of masculinity per se. I think a lot of masculinity is simply cultural, both time and place, or at least our notions of it anyway, are time and place. But I tend to take a much more wide view of it than I once did, and I used to have a very kind of narrow conception that I think my experiences have shown me. Like, for example, like one thing that you'll often hear of someone with my political persuasion is that, like, oh, what don't give up jujitsu, don't give up the gym, because then everyone will think that the only people who go to the gym or who go to jujitsu are right wing. And I understand that impulse. I really do. I one of the things that you can, if you want to get ahead in this political environment, look like a chud and then talk like a progressive. People love that right now. But the truth is, what I've also found is you're just performing their version of masculinity for them. You're not actually cultivating it within yourself. That's not the same thing. Yeah, yes, you're making a show about it. They're setting terms for what masculinity looks like, and then you're trying to honor it. And you can do that, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's kind of what I've been doing for long stretches of my life, to be honest with you. But I don't think that's real masculinity either. It's not that one thing. It can be a variety of different, like a guy who is a gardener. Like, I don't see that. I see that as less hyper masculine. I don't necessarily, depending who the person is, I don't necessarily see that as like inherently not masculine. I don't. It would depend how they were treated, I suppose, on some level. But the older I get, the more I realize that the strength that I thought was masculinity isn't always that. And the ways in which you can see masculinity show up is far more vast than I ever thought it was. And for most of my 20s and 30s, to be honest with you. Where do you think I would be if Kamala would have won? I don't know. Happy, unhappy, in jail? I don't know. But I don't know. I don't know. 115, 145, 55, 205, interim 265. All these weight classes didn't beat the former champ. How bad is this for the sport? Bad. One of the best things is have a long-standing champ and then have someone come and take that from them. If that's the healthiest way you can have. If you don't have that, you've got problems. The current administration is running the Brandon administration's playbook with BB, right? Or worse, but yes. Also, who you got in Hokit versus Lewis? I'll take Hokit, although I slight possibility for Lewis, but I'll take Hokit. But yeah, this is what I mean about these articles. Like, Trump is so upset with BB, dude. You have to be a fucking idiot to believe that. You have to be an idiot to believe it. They're going to do whatever they want. And you know it, and I know it. The World Cup final has a halftime show. Ugh, and they choose Madonna of all people? Jesus. She's old AF. Good on the BBC to skip altogether for the UK. Yeah, who the fuck wants to see that? Madonna? Okay. Favorite or funniest memory with your brother or sister growing up? Or just a favorite time you'd like to share? There was a whole season my brother and I played on a baseball team together where he had not graduated to the next level and I had just entered that level. And so we were put on the same team. That was awesome. That was a great time. Many movements throughout history are tied to substance use. LSD hippies, meth Nazi, booze, U.S. Revolution. That's sort of true. Do you see a connection between the use of TRT peptides and the far-right manosphere movement? Yes, but that's not a political revolution. That's more a pathology of appearance and, standards of masculinity that they're trying to enforce. But in fairness, it's not exclusive to them either. They seem to be the biggest popularizers of it, but by no means is it just limited to them. That's absolutely not the case. But yes, they're the ones that are the most image conscious. I'm a DC local with tickets to the Ellipse. I'm very concerned about the event, given this administration and the public's backlash, but don't want to bail on my friends who I already agreed to host. Have fun, bro. Have fun. I hope it. I mean, I think in all likelihood it'll be fine, but it's a big job. It's a big job. Will all these companies who bought favor with Trump, like TKO and Paramount, sell these companies before Don Trump leaves? I don't know about that, but like if they get broken up, they're definitely just going to they're definitely just going to punt. Like if some of this shit gets broken up, they're just going to punt. And come on. Happy for the space you've been getting for political discussions and news outlets. Nice to see someone honest getting more exposure. Rare these days. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Luke, a martial arts movie coming out next week called The Furious, starring Joe Taslim of Warrior, Raid, The Night Comes For Us fame. While not Indonesian, the director did work on Donnie Yen's stunt team. Anything with Joe Taslim in it is a guaranteed banger. That's what I know. What leverage does the UFC have to preclude fighters to fight outside of their contracts, i.e. Jones? Would he be subject to a lawsuit? Well, they'd get a court order to stop it. That's how we know. When Rampage Jackson was in the middle, you guys did not remember this. Rampage Jackson was in the middle of a Bellator contract and claimed he had left it and then fought, I think, on a Canadian UFC show. And they tried to get a court order to stop it. They didn't stop it, but then they got a court order after the fact to get him to come back to Bellator. But like you might be able to squeeze one through, but they're eventually going to stop it. But literally, Rampage Jackson tried this with UFC. He was signed to Bellator, and then he just took a UFC fight. Look, did you see the guy on Frontier Airlines use BJJ to stop a man from opening the emergency exit door? Rare BJJW. Also, rare W for Frontier. To beat the dead horse even further on this chat, the UFC really gave the game away with the White House event when you realize the actual 4th is on a Saturday. Dude, they originally scheduled it for the 4th. Go look at the original announcements. The original announcements last year were that this was going to be on July 4th, and then they moved it back to his birthday. Thoughts on the Knicks game 1 if you watched? I watched the second half. Think they're going to pull it off? Dude, Jalen Brunson is a fucking animal. It's an animal. I missed the first half, and then I saw the score, and I was like, ooh, this is going to go bad. And then I saw the second half, and I was like, dude, Jalen Brunson is a goddamn man. I think that they're going to win it. Scott needs 105, 165, 175, 195, 225, the midway classes. I don't think so. I mean, maybe 105, but the rest of them, I don't think so. I don't think that's the issue. The issue is just you can repackage the same talent. It's not that doesn't change the talent. Luke, I have heard you say homeschooling is bad. Can you explain this more? My wife and I are considering homeschooling our two kids. We both hated public school, and it seems to have only gotten worse. I don't understand the hatred of public school. As somebody who went to them his entire life and was constantly the new kid for moving around, the problem was not that they were public. There can obviously be a scenario where you could get a superior education homeschooling than you could at school. But my experience has been, for the vast majority of cases, that is not the case, that the parents did not do as good of a job. And it usually falls along some kind of ideological line that I tend to not respect. There's some kind of teaching, I don't know, evolution and biology, or you name it, that requires people to get pulled out of public school. I think the socialization of public school is important. I think being around other people who are on public education is both good for your experience and your exposure. I think you can get, depending on where you live, now this can depend as well, but depending on where you live, the good news about American public schools is still depending you can get a great education at a public school. Like, as I understand it, that's like not the case where my wife comes from. Like, unless you go to private school, you're fucked. I think everyone has to make the best choice for themselves. But and I certainly had teachers who I did not like growing up, but they would have been better than my mom. Yeah, they would have been better than my mom. And it exposed me to other smart kids who made me improve my game. Yeah. Lou, give us peek behind the scenes. How much more do gambling companies pay to sponsors than non-gambling companies? I don't know. Kalshi hit me up and I didn't even answer it. And then all the stuff that happens on MK, I don't touch it. I don't work on ad sales. They don't bring me in on them. I'm kind of divorced from it. I mean, obviously they're putting out a lot of money. People take their money, but I don't actually know. What's your main criticism of Jon Stewart? I like him more than most. He went to William & Mary as well. I mean, there's been issues like he's taken a pro-Israel line at times that I didn't like, or something else. But in general, I don't have great antipathy for him or something. 38-year-old washed-up dad of 3 here finally got a full 5 reps on incline with the 120 dumbbells last week. Let's go. Let's go. This is what I'm talking about. Hell yes. Strong as shit. Good job. Very good job, sir. Appreciate you. Congratulations. Reverence for Plattner feels like bullshit. Yeah, he got a Nazi tattoo, but that was when he was a regular scum. It rings of the disdain liberals have for working people. I don't believe that. That's the opposite, actually. Never seen them so forgiving. They're forgiving because their political options are a guy with a Nazi tattoo or someone who's never, ever, ever, ever going to vote for anything that actually matters. That's why they can look the other way, or at least some of them can anyway. I don't buy his tattoo story at all. I never have. It never made sense to me. But at the same time, you'll never have proper health care. You'll never be able to afford college. You're never going to be able to retire. You're going to die of medical debt, if you try to get treated. Susan Collins will just let you do that. And what choice do you put people in when stuff like that happens? Why aren't more combat sports media doing press with non-sport outlets, even smaller ones like you? Is that a real question? Seems necessary to inform public of corruption going on and expand their audience. Because, listen, the guys at MMA Draw, they talk about this. They do good coverage. Shouts to them. I've seen, Ben Folks do some stuff. Shouts to him. And maybe some other folks have, nibbled at the heels of this. I'm the only one, or at least most prominently, I'm like the most prominent. I don't have competition on this beat. If I want to own this beat, if I want to own the predictions beat, I got a lot of competition. If I want to own the post-fight analysis, with looking at tape, there's a lot of competition. If I want to talk about, dude, I cover MMA on my political channel from a political lens. I don't talk about the fights as such. I just cover it as a political entity engaged in a political activity. And I own this beat because they've given it to me. I don't have any competition. I mean, again, there are some other people who are doing some good stuff, but in general, the way I should say it, in general, I that's just wide open for me to take. That's why. Dude, half the time, not even half the time, the majority of the time I get booked, the producer's always like, yeah, we tried to find other people. There wasn't anyone. You know how many times I've heard that? So they've just served it up to me. And that's how I'm going to be on just on CNN next week. I'm on 4 times. You off Twitter, no live chat updates. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not updating on my MMA Twitter account. I'm not saying I never will again or something. I might next week, or I don't know. But like it just it wasn't fun anymore. I wasn't having a good time. So we'll see how it goes. Are Sean's criticism against MAGA and Israel beneficial to have the right critically analyze the ideology? I think so. I think it's important to get people who may not necessarily see the world like you in totality, but that you can find common ground on those issues. And again, there can be times where, who you make alliances with and under what conditions they need to be surveyed. But as a general observation, do I think it's good that people like Sean Strickland can look at Trump? Now, granted, if he had never been banned, would he have looked at it this way? I don't know, or at least fully anyway. But in general, like, it's better that they can see it too. Yes, of course. We did this one already. Super sticker. Thank you, sir. And then last but not least, got 2 FanFest tickets for the White House and heavily on the fence about going. Could be cool to take my uncle, who's a big UFC guy, but worried about the safety plus being smothered with 80,000 people. You have to do what's best for you. Again, I think the likeliest thing is that it'll just be fine. I really do. I think the likeliest thing is that it's just going to be fine. It's a big job, but I honestly think it'll be okay. However, I do understand if people, are going to err on the side of caution. I was going to go do man on the street stuff, but like, I'm going to err on the side of caution for me personally, but I'm also, again, in this world, something of a public figure. So it creates a different set of challenges for me. But okay, that's it for me. All right, boys and girls, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will have an update about the fights over the weekend and anything else. I'm going to just stay tuned on my channels for coverage. All right. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you to all the members. Thank you to everyone who donated. Thank you to anyone who liked the video. Thank you to everyone, by the way, who then goes to the Substack and does the non-chud live chat over there as well. We appreciate you all. I'm out of here. I'll see you later. And until next time, stay frosty, bitches. Bye.